Just no game. Everything he just said is completely made up. How could they get such an obvious thing wrong? The more this game goes on, the more ridiculous it gets. Listing every historical inaccuracy in Call of Duty World War II. There's a lot of them, so prepare yourself and let's do this. The game starts by showing German Wehrmacht forces heading towards Paris during the Blitzkrieg of France in 1940, wielding loads of flag banners. These, however, were only used by SS units during ceremonial events and not by the Wehrmacht marching through enemy territory. The camera then pans up, showing a Panzer IV F2 which did not enter service until 1942, as well as Panzer IV Aust H/Js not produced until 1943 and 1944 respectively.
Daniel, got a light? Sure thing.
Okay, firstly, the vast majority of landing craft drivers were British Royal Marines, not Americans. And secondly, he shouldn't be smoking due to fire regulations. There were even no smoking signs on the landing crafts to emphasize this. Okay, how are destroyed US half-trucks already on Omaha Beach before the first attacking wave arrived? The Allied vessels were 11 miles offshore during the actual Normandy landings, but are shown way too close to the beach in game. The M1 Garand has iron sights that are way too big, has Sledgehammer engraved in it as a cheeky Easter egg I suppose, and our character always pushes the bolt into battery after reloading. While a Garand's action will not necessarily always close on its own, it is somewhat unusual for it to never close by itself, and the bolt should not remain in a fully rearward position when the clip is inserted.
Fire the hole!
Setting off a 3-meter tube of TNT right in front of you like this would for sure result in a few lost limbs. We can find the German forces using PPSH-41s. This, surprisingly enough, is not completely inaccurate, as many Soviet weapons were captured and could have been brought over to Normandy. In fact, Germany even had a program to refit captured PPSH-41s to fire 9x19mm paramelon rounds. However, in the game, the PPSH-41s are not converted, all have the Soviet stick magazines from 1942, incorrectly have a PPS magwell, and there are way too many of them present being used by German forces. Many of the Wehrmacht soldiers have the tricolour insignia of the German Empire on their helmets, which should not be the case as German High Command mandated against the use of this helmet insignia in 1940. We could find a vast amount of the German soldiers using MP28s, which had largely been supplemented by newer SMGs earlier in the war. Pearson is wielding a Thompson which has a drum mag and foregrip, which was never the case for US soldiers. The sheer scale of the German defences on Omaha Beach are greatly exaggerated in-game. The Atlantic Wall defences and bunker systems were not this extensive. The US soldiers should be wearing the M41 uniform, but are instead seen wearing the M43 uniform, which had not been introduced to US forces in France for another few months after the Normandy landings. M30 Luftwaffe drilling shotguns should not be seen being used by Heer soldiers. This shotgun was produced in very limited numbers from 1941 to 1942 and was used by Luftwaffe pilots mostly in North Africa for hunting. This M2 flamethrower fires for too long. It only had 7 seconds worth of fuel in reality, not to mention that there is no evidence of M2 flamethrowers actually being fired on Omaha Beach. Is that a 20-round trench magazine on a Kart 98K in World War II? Our character's M1911 has unlimited ammo. Also, this pistol would only be given to US officers, specialized soldiers, pilots, and vehicle mechanics in real life, so it would be very unlikely for both our private characters to each have one.
Could use some ammo, sir. It's here, Private.
Turner is apparently carrying every variant of ammunition, even for German guns. Not only is this an incredibly impractical way to destroy an artillery gun, but the TNT would not be able to get ignited by solely the heat of a thermite grenade. You would need a fuse and explosive blasting cap at the end. The Cullen hedgerow device seen on this tank had not been invented until after the landings at Normandy. Nearly all the background US soldiers are wearing no rank insignia, despite having ranks such as corporal and sergeant in their name tags.
Beachhead secured.
Omaha Beach is captured in a matter of minutes in-game, whereas it took hours in reality.
Fun's not allowed under Pearson. You know why he's always writing you? Kasserine Pass. Lost my best friends there. Yeah, earned him an Article 15 and a demotion.
The Article 15 non-judiciary punishment that this fella is talking about seems to be the one from the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which was not established until 1950.
You guys hear that?
Tanks headed this way! Stukas, inbound!
There should not be this many Stukas seen here. During this point in the war, daylight bombing such as this would have been performed by the FW190s. Following the Battle of Britain, Stuka dive bombers had mostly been relocated to be used in the Eastern Front due to their vulnerability, and the small few that were used in the Western Front were mostly deployed to night bombings and the occasional harassing of enemy forces, not massive daylight bombings. Also, the Stukas are flying way too low to the ground, have both drop tanks and 37mm cannons which were unique to different models and would not be seen used together, and we hear them having the iconic Stuka sirens which had stopped being fitted around 1941 and would have not been seen used with the gun pods or the drop tanks. Many of the German soldiers are wearing heavy trench coats despite it being summer. The colour of the German army uniform was Fieldgrau, a mix of grey and green, yet in the game every single Heer soldier is wearing just stone grey with black pants. All swastikas on the German uniforms are replaced by iron crosses, even in the non-German uncensored version of the game. Also, a large portion of them are wearing field caps rather than helmets, despite being in direct combat. The eagle insignia on the left side of the M43 field cap was a thing only for SS forces, not Heer soldiers. Here our character somehow knows how to solely operate a German flak 38AA gun, which also apparently has an endless supply of unlimited ammo, despite the weapon being fed with 20 round box magazines in reality. Here we somehow managed to reload a scoped Kart 90AK and M1903 with a full clip even though the scope is in the way. Our character always loads a full 5-round clip even when there's ammunition still in the weapon. Also, the scoped Kart 90AK and the regular Kart 90AK do not share the same ammo in-game despite being literally the same weapon. These German soldiers are loading nothing, just straight up air into their artillery guns. The MG15 is seen used as the main machine gun of the German forces in-game. Although this weapon did have a converted version for ground forces, the one in the game still has the aircraft sights instead of the bespoke ones from the infantry converted MG15, and it also has a bizarre half-saddle drum magazine instead of the correct double drum mag. The fire rates of the following weapons are completely off. The PPSH, in-game, versus reality. The MP28, in-game, versus reality. The MG15, in-game, versus reality. The MG42, in-game, versus in real life. And here we will add another inaccuracy for having all the weapons sound like absolute BB guns. German jerry cans were not bright red, and shooting them with a bullet would not cause them to completely explode. Here we use an M1 carbine, which not only features completely inaccurate iron sights, but is also referred to as an M1A1 carbine, which would mean it would have a folding stock, which is not the case here. German snipers, if were to use camouflage, would usually wear a camouflage smock, and not these mad modern looking ghillie suits. Also, why are they wearing such heavy forest camouflage in an urban setting? What are they trying to blend in with? The goddamn houseplants? Here we see and use the German Flammenwerfer 35. This has 3 problems however. First being that this flamethrower had stopped being produced and was replaced by the Flammenwerfer 41 3 years prior in 1941. Second being that our character holds the flamethrower by the barrel bare-handed, which would burn you extremely badly in real life. And thirdly is that we fire the Flammenwerfer 35 consistently for an amazing 20 seconds, despite it only having 10 seconds worth of fuel in reality. And just like the Flammenwerfer, the M1 Garand's grenade launcher also has 3 inaccuracies, that being that you shouldn't use the grenade adapter for the M1 Garand in combat when firing live rounds, as the adapter messes with the gas system and makes it a bolt action rifle when the adapter is on. Next is, to fire the grenade launcher, the user must remove the live rounds before inserting propellant rounds. Doing otherwise would result in you literally shooting a grenade in your face. And lastly is that we never pull the pin on the M7 grenade before firing it, which would cause it to not explode.
We captured Marigny.
The 1st Infantry Division attacked Marigny on the 27th of July 1944, not the 26th.
We received intelligence from the resistance about a German train carrying V2 rockets for an attack on Paris refueling near Argenton.
I swear, the more this game goes on, the more ridiculous it gets. Because everything he just said is completely made up. The first V2 rockets would not be fired at Paris until September 8, weeks after the city was liberated. And also, why would they be trying to bomb Paris? The city is still under German control as according to the date shown in game.
Look, this is no ordinary German supply train. It's a fortress on wheels.
According to the game files, this train is the Panzerzug 61, which operated in the Eastern Front and was destroyed a month before the date of this mission.
Suppressors on.
Although there was a suppressed version of the grease gun, it had an integral suppressed barrel, so attaching one would require the user to remove the existing barrel rather than just simply sliding the suppressor over it. Some of the US soldiers are using British Bren machine guns. Although yes, there are British SOE agents in this level, they would usually prefer to use more covert weapons. The Bren would have been used by the main British forces, which there are none of seen throughout this game. As a matter of fact, there is no Canadian, Polish or any other allied force other than the US, Free French and SOE shown in the game at all as well. We even go on to see later on weapons that were used by Polish and Canadian forces, but there is absolutely no mention of them at all. These German shotgun soldiers with the mad amount of shells wrapped around them become quite ludicrous when you consider the fact that the German army never employed any shotgun in any form of large scale during World War II. The MG42 on this Jeep is incorrectly referred to as an MG34. For obvious safety reasons, weapons such as this tank should not be manned or armed when in transport.
Train go boom.
We have the honor of making this year's Call of Duty called World War II.
Our chance to tell the epic, gritty, visceral story of the world's greatest conflict.
There is a genuine interest in producing a product that is historically authentic.
Every part of this game has been researched and nuanced and studied and scanned and photographed. We really tried to get the respect and the details right of the game.
Just no game! That's all there is to be said.
This is it. We're gonna liberate Paris. The French 2nd Armored Division and the US 4th Infantry arrive at dawn.
Note how he says the French 2nd Armored Division and the 4th US Infantry Division, and nothing about the division he is in, the 1st Infantry, because the 1st Infantry Division had nothing to do with the liberation of Paris, yet the game shoves them in there anyway.
The garrison is run by SS and Polizeiführer Heinrich.
The German garrison in Paris was under the command of Dietrich von Kaltitz. Paris is currently engulfed in fighting and is under the threat of bombing at any stage, meaning all of these houses' lights should not be on as a blackout would be in place. Also, why is there bright spotlights highlighting the German garrison? I mean, they are literally saying, "Hey allies, here is our main HQ, come and bomb us." Oh my, there is so much wrong with these uniforms. Half of them are seen wearing a black Allgemeine SS uniform which was not worn outside Germany. Despite wearing a base SS uniform, as well as a SS honor chevron and party armband, they have Wehrmacht insignia. Their order bars feature non-existent awards. And to top it all off, these horribly depicted mix of SS/Wehrmacht officers are referred to as Gestapo soldiers in-game, which were the secret police, a completely different agency. Crowley hands this officer the papers of our female character, which they somehow accept. This mission takes place on the night of the 25th of August 1944. By this time, approximately 75% of Paris had already been liberated from German control, with one column of the 2nd French Armoured Division having already entered the city centre near to the location of this mission. Intense fighting, especially in this sector, started before the infiltration mission had even begun, so it should not be nearly as quiet as it is here in game.
Nennen Sie Ihren Namen.
Ah yes, what is your name? I'm sure our spy character won't remember her alias name, and if you do somehow happen to forget, then be prepared to get a P08 pistol magically appeared and pulled on you from this German officer with his non-existent pistol holster.
I'm not sure what I will miss more. Savoring the sweet flesh, or watching it thrash to death. But there is one thing of which I am certain. Watching your son flail as he drowned under my boot gave me the greatest pleasure of all.
As aforementioned, a Wehrmacht general named Dietrich von Kaltitz was the actual garrison leader and appointed military governor of Paris in August of 1944. Some important information about this fella is that as the Allies continued their quick advance towards Paris, and when there was no hope to keep the city in Axis hands, Hitler gave a direct order to Kaltitz, demanding the city to be completely destroyed, with him saying, quote, "Paris must not pass into the enemy hands except as a field of ruins," after which explosives were planted at various bridges and monuments and would see many famous structures such as the Eiffel Tower and Notre Dame to be completely demolished. Kaltitz, horrified by such a futile demand, decided that Hitler had gone completely insane, and so he disobeyed the order and thus saved Paris from destruction. When the Allies then entered Paris, he put up little resistance and surrendered the city to Free French forces. Now, it is debated among historians of his level of actual control over the situation in Paris, and the question of if he had ignored the order primarily to have more favourable treatment when he was arrested by the Allies. But regardless, after being released from captivity with no real charges made against him, he would go on to visit his once wartime headquarters in Paris, have high-ranking French officers attend his funeral in 1966, and was even given the nickname of Saviour of Paris for his actions. So yeah, this is in quite some contrast to the character who we see in game, who is an absurdly over-the-top evil SS Polizeiführer monster who just so happens to have personally murdered a family member of our character. Time and time again, the game informs us that the explosives we receive from Fischer are stolen German bombs, but when it comes time to plant them, we can see that they are clearly American dynamite sticks. The carry handle assembly on our BAR was designed and tested in late 1944 and never actually saw any documented combat use during World War II. This French resistance fighter suddenly starts speaking perfect English with an American accent when he gets injured.
Somebody help me! Please help me!
Let's count how many BAR 30 caliber bullets shot point blank straight to the face does it take to kill this German. 1, 2, 3, 4. Crowley picks up an American M97 trench gun from a dead German soldier and hands it to us, where it is then revealed that it somehow holds 7 shells when it only holds 6 in reality.
We did it! The ghost forces are entering the city.
Dagoul's forces, in the form of the 9th Company of the Regiment du Marché du Chad, part of the French 2nd Armoured Division, had already entered the city a day before the date of this mission on the evening of the 24th. And a fun fact about this particular company is that out of their 160 members, 146 of them were actually Spanish Republicans from the Spanish Civil War, but of course they get no mention in the game. Over a third of all German forces in Aachen were Volkssturm, People's Army, which were ragtag militias of heavily under-equipped conscripted citizens, yet we see none of them in the game.
Shot can't penetrate that front armor!
What do you mean we can't penetrate the armor? Our Sherman has a 76mm cannon capable of penetrating up to 93mm of armor. We should be able to easily penetrate the front armor of any Panzer IV.
Tiger! Lure it back! We need to hit its flanks!
Okay, so according to this game's logic, our tank is incapable of damaging the front armor of a Panzer IV, which is 75mm thick, but is capable of penetrating the side armor of a Tiger II, which is also 75mm thick. When firing the M1 bazooka, as well as the Panzerschreck, our character never attaches the wires to the rockets that would be required for the electrical ignition. Despite using completely different rockets, we can somehow use Panzerschreck rockets in our M1 bazooka. Also, the M1 bazooka itself would be completely outdated at this stage of the war, and should instead be an M1A1 variant. It appears that the developers forgot to add in a Gewehr 43, and so instead gave many of the German soldiers Soviet FVT-40s. Many of the German forces are seen using Walter automatic shotguns. Only a few thousand of these were ever made, had stopped being produced in the 1930s, and on top of this they also feature a detachable magazine in-game, which was never the case for this shotgun. Our characters' files reveal that they are all in the 16th Infantry Regiment. However, the assault on Hotel Quellenhof on the date of this mission was carried out by soldiers of the 26th Infantry Regiment. The M1941 Johnson machine gun that some of the US soldiers have were only made in very limited supply for Allied Special Forces operating behind Axis lines. This whole civilian evacuation from the hotel basement is just fiction, and evacuating civilians during an active battle and sending them off in a German truck so that they can go get lit up by the next squad of US forces up the road would, for obvious reasons, be a terrible idea.
Yeah, well, right now, the last thing I should be worried about is if two of my best men can follow orders when we're on the verge of the biggest operation of the entire war.
Nope, not even close. The biggest operation of World War II was, and by a long shot, Operation Barbarossa, the German invasion of the USSR.
The Hurtgen is dark and nearly impenetrable. Our mission is to take Hill 493.
Okay, firstly, there was no such thing as Hill 493. There was, however, a Hill 400 at the Hurtgen Forest, which is very clearly the hill the game is trying to depict, yet it somehow gave it the wrong name. I mean, this entire mission is called Hill 493. How could they get such an obvious thing wrong? And secondly, there would be no notable US attack on Hill 400 for almost a month after the date of this mission, and even this eventual assault itself was carried out by the 2nd Ranger Battalion of the 75th Ranger Regiment, and not the 16th Infantry Regiment that our group is in. Even Call of Duty 2, which was released 12 years before this, managed to get this right. Here we incorrectly use M1A1 tank mines as anti-personnel mines. M1 mines had an operating pressure of 120 to 250 kgs, so unless we are fighting against some seriously overweight Germans, then they should not be exploding by them simply walking by them. We now see the non-existent German shotgunner enemies using dragon breath incendiary shells in their extremely rare World War I era Walter automatic shotguns. Dragon breath rounds did not emerge until the 1970s and 80s. We can find the German ghillie suit snipers using the Karabin, which was a Polish prototype weapon produced in 1938, of which only around 150 of them were ever made. Also, it incorrectly features a detachable magazine. The real-life rifle had a non-detachable magazine fed by Mauser clips. The what is clearly a M1A1 Thompson is mislabeled as an M1928 Thompson. The safety switch on the STG-44 is always on, yet we can still somehow fire. Throughout the levels in Hurtgen Forest, we can see many German soldiers wearing SS camo uniforms. Not only are they again wearing Wehrmacht insignia with an SS uniform, but also there seems to exist no evidence of SS units in the Hurtgen Forest sector at all. It should be mostly Heer and Volksgrenadiers. Also, this oak leaf tunic is fictional. The real Waffen SS camouflage uniforms use the P44 pattern. This bizarre mix of a C96 and M712 variant Mauser pistol is missing its fire selector, which would be needed to fire the weapon full auto. We can find the Heer soldiers using many FG42s, despite the fact that this weapon was produced in very limited numbers and was made for and used by Luftwaffe paratroopers, not Heer soldiers. Here we place a thermite grenade in an artillery gun's breech. This was a common tactic used to destroy artillery guns, as the molten iron in the thermite grenade would essentially weld the gun shut, making it inoperable. It is a much more realistic way of destroying an artillery piece than the earlier seen 2.5 pounds of dynamite somehow solely ignited by a thermite grenade, and I was completely happy out with it. That was until we see the artillery gun completely explode, even though there is nothing in the thermite grenade or artillery gun to cause such an explosion. This uniform is simply terrible. It is an ordinary M36 officer's uniform repainted in black. Why would they do this? We saw the black base uniform depicted better earlier. They could have just reused the model. There was never any German tanks used during the fighting on Hill 400, not to mention that successfully operating and getting a Tiger II up onto this hill through all this wet, harsh terrain would be very infeasible. And the same can be said about the Sherman, which arrives later in the mission.
Daniels, you plant a thermite on the back! Now move!
Okay, Turner, thermite grenades do burn at extremely high temperatures, but there is no way that it would be able to melt a giant hole through the armor of and destroy the engine of a Tiger II. Oh, wait, okay. The evacuating crew of this Tiger tank are all wearing standard infantry uniforms when they should be wearing the uniforms of a tank crew. Why does Turner have a British Enfield No. 2 revolver, and why does it feature a swing out cylinder instead of the top brake action that it actually had?
Anything good for me? Could use a pack of cigarettes.
Jonesy, those things will kill you quicker than a bullet.
Although links between smoking and its adverse deadly health effects such as bronchitis and lung cancer started being discovered in the 1920s, due to the influence of tobacco companies and the media, this would not become common knowledge until the release of many major medical documents in the 1950s and 60s. Our American soldier starts this mission by pulling out and using a British Lee Enfield, which he can apparently load 10 rounds into only with one 5-round clip, while the scope is in the way as well.
I can't believe they let him fight.
Oh yeah, they even let us die.
Some 2,500 African American soldiers did fight during the Battle of the Bulge, where they proved to impress the top brass and make big strides in the eventual desegregation of the US Army after World War II in 1948. However, they still would, at this time, be in segregated black-only units such as the 761st Tank Battalion, so it is inaccurate to have Howard mixed in with and leading a squadron of white soldiers as shown in game here. The P-47 Thunderbolt would not have bombs attached to its wings while on an escort mission, as it would add unnecessary weight, thus limiting range and wasting fuel. Unless our character is secretly an OSS agent, then it would be incredibly unlikely that he would have a silenced M1911. This MG42 has no ammo feeding into it. Okay game, if you're going to censor the swastikas, then at least be consistent about it. There are no reports of any Luftwaffe aircraft attacking Ludendorff Bridge on the day of its capture. When the German enemies get wounded, they switch to their sidearm of what is always a P08 Luger, which had mostly been replaced by the Walter P38 by this time. Once again, we see the SS camo uniform wearing German soldiers with Wehrmacht insignia show up, this time in Remagen, even though there was no evidence of any SS units fighting during this battle.
Just made history, fellas. First across the Rhine.
No, you are not. The first US forces to cross Ludendorff Bridge were soldiers of the 9th Armored Division, not the 1st Infantry Division.
Daniels, you gotta see this. Tracks lead to the fields. That's where they must have marched them.
It is true that as the Allies approached Berger concentration camp, the German command abandoned it and marched all the POWs out of the camp, where they would not be rescued by US forces for another 2.5 weeks. However, in the game we find the POWs almost immediately on the same day of them leaving the camp, and when we arrive to rescue them, we see that Zussman is the only surviving prisoner, despite there being around 250 left alive in reality. Also, it was soldiers of the 11th Armored Division who rescued these prisoners, not the 1st Infantry Division. Without even touching this game's multiplayer, we have counted a total of 117 historical inaccuracies. But hey, at least it isn't nearly as bad as the false promises made in the marketing of the even more fictitious Black Ops Cold War, which we have listed the inaccuracies in this video shown on screen now, or even the surprisingly inaccurate Call of Duty WW2, which we have also covered here. So before liking, subscribing, or even becoming a channel member, click on one of them and I'll see you there, because trust me, they get bad. Thanks for watching, this has been the Frosty one, out.